This is the Nike Mercurial Vapor 16 Pro, which comes in at €160, which is over $100 less than the Elite variation. And it offers an awful lot of what people are going to be looking for in a Mercurial. So should you buy this instead of the Elites if you're going to save €110? And in some areas, is the Vapor 16 Pro actually better? Let's start with the upper, because the upper is the area where these boots differ the most and the area where I have the most difficulty making a case for the Pro being the better boot. So what have we got? We have grip knit on the Vapor 16 Elite, which honestly is probably the best upper that Nike have ever put on a Mercurial in terms of the material. So that's a pretty high bar. The Pro is a Flyknit base, and there's absolutely nothing wrong with that. But in order to give this Flyknit a little bit of extra structure, it does have a slightly thicker lining to it, and it also has a polyurethane top coating that's going to protect it, and again, provide a little bit of structure. So you have nothing like the grip knit texturing that runs around the boot. However, the advantage here is if you're somebody that doesn't want that grippy feeling, well, the Pro is pretty perfect. It does have ACC, but yeah, sure, whatever. So, the touch on the ball, what is it like? Is it barefoot? Is it exactly what you want from a Mercurial? Well, it's direct, it's uninterrupted, and it's fairly natural. But it's not the most barefoot. I would argue the barefoot one-to-one feeling is better in the Elite, but of course you have this unnatural grippy feeling as well. With the Pro variation, what you've got is, because of the way this particular type of Flyknit is built, there is a reasonably substantial liner that runs all the way through the boot, and then you have this top coating as well, which does make it a little bit on the thicker side, which, as you can see, doesn't affect how soft and how pliable it is, but what it does do is mean that you're not quite as in contact with the ball overall, and it's not quite as barefoot. I wouldn't say it's a problem, especially for a boot at €160, but just be aware if you're looking for razor sharp barefoot touch, it's not this, but I'm not going to complain about that at all. And let's say my only other issue is because of the way that this top coating is built, it means that you do get a little bit of extra creasing, more so than you might want through the boot, just because of the way that upper is built and the way that the structure has been given. But considering the price of boots at the moment, considering these are over €100 cheaper than the Elite level model, no, I don't think the upper or the touch are as nice. But if you're not looking for that slightly grippy feeling, or even if you don't like it, these are a really solid alternative for a lot less money. Speaking of things that are a solid alternative for a lot less money, we have the traction, the outsole as a whole, the stud pattern and the sole plate, really good here. Now, you've got a really nice amount of stability through the midfoot and heel, as you would expect from a Mercurial, and on top of that, you've got a really lovely bend point with a decent amount of spring back. It's not the most responsive, most incredible spring back you're ever going to get out of a speed boot, but this is more than good enough, especially again for a boot at this particular price point. If we do compare it again to the Elite, you can see that the stud pattern is pretty much identical, and the sole plate itself does look similar. Of course, there is a glaring omission, and that is this giant air branding down the front here, which does signify that we do not get the big air zoom pod running through the front of the boot. However, you will also notice we do have the big air branding around the back, so you would assume there is an air zoom in here somewhere, and you would be correct. So if we take the insole out, you can see just in the heel here, there is a little pod. What is that? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. How's 6? Hexagon? There's a little hexagonal pod in the back. That is what you get for the Air Zoom. It is not noticeable whatsoever. So this is nothing to get excited about, or that you've got Air Zoom. But for me, if you saw my elite level review, I'm not a huge fan of the Air Zoom pod. It absolutely does what it's supposed to do, and it adds a little bit of comfort. But for my speed boots, I want to sit down into the boot and I want to feel more aggressive, and I don't necessarily want this airbag underneath the front of my foot. Not having the airbag here, you don't necessarily sit down into the boot, but not having it, I actually think is quite a nice sensation. Again, this is kind of personal preference as to whether you do want it or not. But considering I don't really want it, and these are 110 euros cheaper, you can start to see where you're going to get the appeal and why these might be worth considering. Let's talk about the lockdown, or the key component for a Mercurial. I think it's absolutely fine here. It is good. And something that I do like, let's see if we can get these side by side, is that it definitely to me feels like there is less volume running through the pro level boot, which means that I just feel like the whole boot sits closer to my foot. So when I pull the laces tight, I do feel like it's pushing me down into the boot a little bit more. Then you combine that with this more structured upper, which yes, takes away from some of that barefoot touch, but the overall structure, especially through this midfoot area, I think means that the lockdown in the Pro is actually better. So there are some trade-offs to get it, but I prefer this, especially this lower volume, closer fit around here that's really locking me down into the boot a little bit nicer. So lockdown, pretty damn good. Like, it's not the most locked in sensation you're ever going to get. Don't expect to be blown away. But again, pro level boot compared to elite level boot, well worth considering, and you will not complain about the lockdown. If you do want to pick up a pair, or you want to check out to see what discounts are available, hit the link down in the top pinned comment. You can also become a Boot Wizard member there. We get early access to all of my videos, which is, you know, fantastic for everybody and helps support the channel. We can't talk about lockdown without talking about the heel, which has a lot of very good elements here, but also one element that I don't like. What I do like is the padding. Overall, it is pretty good, maybe a little bit too much, and maybe the heel is a tiny bit on the wide side. I would like to see this pinched and just sculpted in a little bit more to really increase the heel lockdown. I haven't had any problems, but I would love to feel that little bit more secure in there. Then with comfort, what we actually have is we have that soft middle section, which is similar to what we're getting on the elite level boot. And overall, the comfort is good in terms of padding. But I do have one problem, which is that heel is actually designed to be very, very straight. If we can try and get those side by side, I hope you can see there's just a little bit of a curve to the elite level boot, which allows your heel to sit back into it a little bit more and is more comfortable. The Pro is just that little bit too straight for me, and that does mean that it is a little bit uncomfortable, especially at the beginning. You can kind of power through it, break through it, and I didn't get any blisters, but it is something I think you'll definitely feel. I think this is something everybody will feel, is that this heel is maybe just a little bit too straight. Speaking of volume, we of course need to talk about sizing. So if you want to know what size you should go out and buy, the easy answer is if you've tried on the Elite, you go and buy the same size as that. And if you've worn any Nike boots over recent times, then buy the same size as that. I have these in a US 8, and the sizing in terms of length is pretty much bang on. Now, in terms of width, I do think there is a little bit more width in the Pro level boot when compared to the Elite level boot. But I think because the Pro is kind of more structured, there's not actually a huge amount of difference between the two, because you can stretch out this elite level model and it will mold to your foot nicer than the Pro will. So for wide feet, they are reasonably good if you have a wider foot. They just have a natural width to them, and they do have a little bit more width through the toe box, especially in this area when compared to the Elite. I find, again, this is natural width. The Elite will mold and shape that little bit better. If you have a high volume foot, the Elite is probably going to work out better for you because it just simply has more volume, which I find to the detriment of its performance, but in fit terms, that might be what you're looking for. So if we were to compare the two and decide which one to get, well, the better performer is obviously the Elite. I don't think anybody came into this video expecting to discover anything else. But the question obviously becomes, is it 110 euros better than the Pro? The answer is probably not, especially when you consider that the Pro is more likely to go into big discounts, and the chances of you being able to pick this up for around 100 euros are reasonably high, and that is well worth considering, and I think well worth picking up with even a little bit of discount on it. If you do want to pick up a pair, or you want to check out to see what discounts are available, hit the link down in the top pinned comment. You can also become a Boot Wizard member there. You get early access to all of my videos, which is, you know, fantastic for everybody and helps support the channel. Do like the video and get subscribed, but that's all from me here today. Let me know in the comments which one you're going to buy.